and you guys kind of know Pastor Patti leads this whole crew. So like one little clarification, in case someone was mistakenly thinking this was my vision and I asked her, could you please implement it? No, actually this was her vision. And she asked me, well, can you please be a part of it? And also, as you guys know, she has a good awareness about staying synchronized. So that was like her initiative of like, hey, Karl, I really want to stay synchronized with you. And one of the pieces that has, one of the reasons why I feel so good about this network is that one, Patty's value, her what she brings is the awareness and the value of how important it is to stay synchronized so that we include the pieces that should be there and don't include pieces that aren't. That's a value that she brings, which is great. I mean, it makes sense to me, and I have that value, but she carries it kind of with a little bit more passion and has the time and energy to implement it for you all, which is good. And one of the things that just kind of how life happens, it just so happens that of all the people in the world, she's just spent the most time where we actually like every week work on her healing stuff, and then most of the time for 15 minutes or an hour afterwards, she'll ask questions and we'll synchronize. So it's just, there's nobody else I've had the opportunity to spend that much time with. So the reality is that she's just more synchronized with the way I do it than anybody else. And there's other people who have the basic ingredients, they're getting good results. I hear testimony from saying, oh, I had this wonderful experience at Thrive, or I had this wonderful experience with somebody else's way of doing it. But as far as I'm aware, the people doing it the most closely to how I do it are you all, because Patty's just spent the most time actually being with me, which all kind of just makes sense, right? And so a couple more just details of honoring. It's easy, I mean, and part of it is because she is so deliberate about honoring me, which I appreciate, and partly from my Mennonite standard, I'm just kind of like, well, okay, that kind of feels nice, but makes me a little uncomfortable. I'm not quite sure what to do with that. You know, it's like, but a part of what that, as you all know, she'll say, oh, and Dr. Karl said this, or Dr. Karl says this, or I learned this from Dr. Karl, I did this with Dr. Karl. And it's easy to swing that pendulum too far and think anything Patti presents must have been developed by Dr. Karl, and she's just sharing it with us, which would be somewhat understandable. And it's correct about some things, but like, for example, the whole ocean, the kind of ocean thing she does, the river and the ocean, like as she developed that, you know, she would bring it in, we'd talk about it, and we'd work on it together and kind of think and learn together, and two minds work, the brain works better in community. But most of that has been her vision and inspiration and guidance from the Lord, and I would throw in pieces here and there, or there'd be places we'd look at it together and say, well, actually, we adjust something, but most of that whole river ocean package is hers, which I think is great. The steps, you know, we had different models we kicked around as far as the different levels of intimacy, and I mean, a part of this, like this happens with me and Jim Wilder, where I'll say something that I don't even recognize, and then he'll bounce off that and throw something back. And I think, oh, that was your idea. And he's like, well, no, you first. And we would go back and forth 4 or 5 times, and we couldn't even quite remember. Each of us thought the other one had thought of it, and it was kind of complicated. And it had been such a team thing, we kind of lost it. And there's a bunch of things that like that, like the levels of intimacy. There's different. I can't even remember the first 5 iterations, and we would go back and forth, and invent pieces together, and she'd bring a piece, and then I would throw out a piece, and then she would take that and go up a notch and bring it back better, and then I'd say, oh, what about this? And there's a number of the modules or packages or blocks of teaching that Patti does that were mostly hers, and I threw in some thoughts. Some of them we would invent together, like the stair step thing, the ocean thing, and like the intimacy piece. Like, I got that one from my experiences. I got that one from Jesus. He was the one who, in that session, said, "Yeah, the healing is nice. I love my children. I like to relieve their pain, but the primary purpose for all this emotional healing stuff is to remove the blockages between your heart and me." So that, I mean, and that was, I can still picture that session. I can picture where I was sitting. I can picture my desk. I can picture the office, and I can remember I told the person to repeat it 4 times. So I mean, I wrote it down word for word. It was just like, oh, both of us were like, wow, that's profound. So that was like, I got that from Jesus, which is also totally biblical. I mean, it's all over the place. The whole Bible is about our relationship with God. And that's a piece, and fairly early on in my writing and teaching about Immanuel, I was saying, this intimacy piece is big. But part of the humbling reality is like, pretty much everybody who comes into my office says, I want to pay you a whole lot of money to make the pain go away. I've never had anybody yet come in and say, I would like to have more intimacy with Jesus. Can you please, help me get healing for that purpose? So it's easy for me to slide back into where healing trauma. That was my own journey. How I got there was make the pain stop, healing trauma. That was a model I grew up with. That was the whole, most of my life I spent with my relational circuits mostly off, trying to save the world so I wasn't scared all the time. The whole relational circuits on, liking to be with people was sort of a new thing for me. And there's ways in which Patti has actually been more effective in holding on to the vision about the center of the bullseye is intimacy, which I totally agree with. I'm convinced I heard that directly from Jesus. I think he's right. That's in the writing, I say that over and over. In the book, in my assessment, one of the required ingredients of the Immanuel approach is that the number one priority is intimacy. And that actually, by the way, I think is one of the biggest differences from all the other things. I'm not aware of any of those other schools of thought where they say the number one priority is intimacy and emotional healing is a wonderful byproduct. I mean, they all do healing, as does the Immanuel approach. And often they would accidentally, to varying degrees, people would have experiences of Jesus, sometimes not, kind of all mixed in different ways. And anytime you get healing, it does actually help your intimacy with the Lord. But I'm not aware of any other model that teaches the number one priority is intimacy, and everything else is nice side effects, secondary fruit. We're grateful for it. And that's one that, Patti has held on to that. There's been times where I'm realizing, oh, thanks, Patti. That's the most important thing. That's what I say in my book. I forgot it. Again, thank you for holding on to that. So there's a number of others that, can you think of other pieces that were half yours, mostly yours?
Some of the Bible emphasis.
Oh yeah, yes, the biblical stuff. Fantastic. When I go into mental health settings, they want to know, is this credible? Is this one of those goofy Christian things? Is there any brain science behind it? Which is why I bring a lot of that. And there are settings where if they don't feel like you're credible, they're not going to listen to you. That's a huge value, especially in the professional settings where if you can, give any kind of halfway creditable, even initial run at, this is good brain science, this is legitimate, it shares important similarities with the most research-supported forms of therapy in existence, exposure therapy, cognitive therapy, EMDR. They'll be like, oh, well, okay, I'm listening. And there's church settings, which usually weren't the places I was, but there are a lot of church settings, as you guys know, that if you can't convince them that this is biblical, they won't listen to you. They won't let you in the door. And that's a huge blessing. You guys know that 3/4 of Patti's book is a huge pile of all the ways this is biblical. And then the website's got 10 times more. And that was a huge blessing. I love it. And my chapter in the new book bounced off of what was in Immanuel Practicum and added some pieces, and then also refers to it, and then you can go back there for even more. So yeah, that's a huge, wonderful piece that Patti brings. Seeing Jesus in the room, which is a fun little. We invented that together accidentally, which I think I've told that story about how I was thinking when I said, okay, see him in the present, I meant today, see him in the context of your memory, as opposed to have it be purely a memory. She was thinking in the present means right here. And I didn't even realize we were on different pages for months. And then when I finally figured it out, there was some little clue about something she said, and I realized, oh my gosh, for this whole time, she's been talking about in the present here in front of her chair, oh wow. And then I realized something neat was happening, so I didn't tell her, which she still bugged me about. Because I let her write me, and I was thinking, this is fantastic. Whatever she's doing is working. Wherever she trains it, people can do it. She has an anointing to teach it. She has faith for it. This is something good. I'll just keep my mouth shut and keep learning instead of upset her by telling her that that's actually not what I intended at the beginning, which would have made a problem probably, especially if I'd done it too early. So that was a neat thing where we kind of accidentally invented it together, but it was like there was a core piece there where she was the one who misunderstood what I meant, but then accidentally discovered a new thing, and then took it and developed it and taught it and has faith and anointing for it and spread it all over the world, which is fantastic. Yeah, there's a number of places where she's translated my things into more accessible English, which is nice. This is one she did get from me as far as get your own healing. You know, there's 1,227 now, I think it is, reasons for getting your own healing. And I hammer that one. And she hammers that as one of the many ways that she, I feels like, does a good job of representing kind of the vision I'm trying to offer. But she doesn't just talk about it, she does it. And my bet is that there's few people in the room who are as faithful as far as like every week. I mean, when she's in Europe, you know, she doesn't fly back just for Thursday morning. But unless there's something really big in the way, every week she comes in and works on her stuff, even when it's hard, even when she knows coming in, this is not going to be fun. And that's, again, not just talking, but leading by example, which I think is a good reason why she's the leader of the team, because that's one of the important pieces, one of the most important pieces. And like one of the 1,227 reasons is, you know, your own triggers don't get in the way and blow things up. Your discernment is better. Stuff is out of the way, so your intimacy with Jesus is better. That's like what we're supposed to be teaching. So if you're doing it yourself, that's actually a good thing, and you're going to be able to teach it better if you're actually doing it. So for a whole bunch of reasons, it's great that she totally lives that one, not just talk about it. There are really important pieces that I developed, and for those, some of them Patty translates so you can hear them even better, which is great.
Yeah.
And there are some really important pieces that she's developed, and I've been thrilled to recognize, oh, she thought that was me, it really wasn't. Fantastic, thank you, Patty. I'll take that one and make it a part of my official manual teaching. Did a little adjustment there.
Okay. Let's take a break.